Again, with the growing international crisis between the U.S. and North Korea and more tough talk from both sides.
That's right. KCON 9 political reporter Dave Bryan has the new warnings issued by both the U.S. and North Korea today. Dave?
Yeah, there were certainly calls today to tone this thing down.
Yeah.
Come on. But the North Koreans weren't listening. North Korea is pushing forward to send its missiles buzzing Japan and then plunging into the ocean off the shores of Guam, while Trump administration cabinet members are sending out mixed signals to Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. All this as huge crowds took the streets in Pyongyang, raising their fists in anger at America. Demonstrators packed the streets of North Korea's capital on Wednesday in a boisterous protest against worldwide sanctions imposed on their country because of the dangerous nuclear missile system that threatens South Korea, Japan, and other neighboring countries, as well as the United States soon. And the bellicose North Korean rhetoric continues to focus on Guam, an American territory in the Pacific with strategic U.S. air bases. The North Korean military now says it will finalize its plan in another week to fire 4 mid-range missiles into the ocean about 20 miles off the shores of Guam if the U.S. tries to intimidate North Korea. The governor of Guam assured local residents the island will be defended.
This is not a time to panic. These are many statements that are being made out there by a very bellicose leader, but at this point there has been no change in the security situation here in Guam. I've gotten assurances again from all levels, both local command and in Washington, D.C., that this island will be defended.
Dave Schmerler, a research associate at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, California, says talking is one thing. But if the North Koreans actually carry out that missile mission, there could be dangerous consequences.
I certainly hope this is posturing, because this would be, if they tested over Japan and then landed 4 of their IRBMs 30 to 40 kilometers off the coast of Guam, this would be the most provocative test done to date.
All of this just one day after President Trump upped the ante with North Korea, promising fire and fury if that country continues to push and develop its nuclear missile program, which is expected to reach capability of hitting the west coast of America in as soon as a couple of years. In an in-flight interview on Wednesday, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson defended the president's fiery rhetoric.
What the president was doing is sending a strong message to North Korea in language that Kim Jong-un would understand, because he doesn't seem to understand diplomatic language.
Tillerson also tried to tamp down the fears that the fiery language would trigger a war.
I think Americans should sleep well at night. I have no concerns about this particular rhetoric of the last few days. I think the president, again, as commander-in-chief, I think he felt it necessary to issue a very strong statement directly to North Korea.
And the tough talk from the Trump administration continues, with Defense Secretary James Mattis following in the president's footsteps. Mattis suggesting that North Korea should cease any actions that could lead to the end of its regime and the destruction of its people. The president's high-volume approach to North Korea is getting mixed reviews from Republicans.
I don't think the rhetoric is the problem. I think the problem is there's a lunatic in North Korea with nuclear weapons and the ability to put them on a missile that can reach the United States. This is not a rhetoric issue. It's not a campaign or a political issue. This is a national security issue. And he was working on those nuclear weapons before Donald Trump was president. So Trump is not the cause of the North Korea crisis.
I'm not exactly sure that the president has fully appreciated that when he speaks, the most powerful man in the world, person in the world, his words, his or her words, reverberate all over the world.
Former Director of National Intelligence in the Obama administration, James Clapper, urged the president to tone it down.
Having come out with that kind of rhetoric from the presidential level raises the ante. And what we have always done in the past is take the rhetoric emanating from North Korea with a grain of salt.
Well, of course, you could make the argument that what the U.S. has always done in the past hasn't worked very well, at least not to the extent that it stopped the North Koreans from building their nuclear arsenal and the missiles to deploy them. And President Trump has certainly made it clear that he has no intention of simply following what's always been done in the past, and that's just what his supporters want.
Yeah, more on what President Trump wants. The Pentagon, I understand, has already prepared a preemptive strike against North Korea should the president ask for it. So what's the probability that they may have to use that?
That's a tough one. Realistically, the chances of this degenerating into a military conflict with a preemptive strike from the U.S., I think, are very small. It's not impossible. I'm talking about right now, but the stakes are so high and the potential losses could be so catastrophic for both sides that it's hard to imagine. It's one thing to talk big. It's quite another to plunge your country and your allies in Japan and South Korea into a potential war, perhaps including nuclear weapons on both sides. Because if the preemptive strike doesn't completely destroy the North Korean nukes and that country's military complex, then North Korea will be responding in kind, and that would have serious repercussions for the entire world. I think the only thing that could spark a preemptive strike by the U.S. at this time would be if American intelligence, U.S. military leaders, and the president were all convinced that Korea was going to attack this country or our allies, Jeff.